So moving on to the second tip then, is you want to make sure that you're building your team. And so in thinking about building your team, you want to identify and engage with the individuals and entities who will be critical in a grant application and implementation when funded. And thinking about who you should reach out to, we kind of conceptualize this into terms of the usual suspects and maybe not so usual suspects. So some of the usual suspects may be, for instance, a co-PI or co-PIs, individuals with expertise that you don't have that would be critical to the implementation of the project, reaching out to grant writers or the Office of Sponsored Research. And reaching out to the grant writer may not necessarily be that they're writing the grant, but they may be able to provide information in terms of the policies of your institution, and also will be able to give you information around who is the authorized representative who can actually submit the grant. And you want to make sure that this is on their radar. And also in terms of that submission process, making sure that you find out who will need to sign off on the proposal to allow yourself enough time to be able to get their permission. Then you may need to also be reaching out to industry and educational partners and building relationships in that way. And then the accounting office as well to be able to put together the budget justification. Now, while the evaluator may actually be a usual suspect, we put it here because the way that you engage with the evaluator may be a little bit different. You may want to make sure that you're reaching out to the evaluator as early in the process as possible, even if you don't necessarily have the narrative written quite yet, just to make sure that it's on that person's radar. It's really helpful from planning purposes to know that there's going to be a narrative or an evaluation plan that will need to be written and reviewed. Another entity that you probably will consider, but may not necessarily consider in the pre-award phase, is an institutional researcher. And we've heard and talked with various individuals from institutional research, and they do share that being able to know that there's a grant that's being submitted is incredibly helpful. And having that initial conversation may help, again, in terms of building the data systems that you may need in terms of actual implementation. And of course, quickly after any type of awards, you want to make sure to reach out to institutional research as well. Other individuals or entities to reach out to would be purchasing or procurement, depending on how they're called within your institution, so that you can learn about what the procurement requirements are for your institution around, let's say, securing an evaluator or purchasing equipment. All of those things that you will want to know while you're putting together a grant application. You may also want to leverage the support from a mentor or accountability partner. So when thinking about the timeline that we talked about before, if you're actually putting milestones together, an accountability partner or a mentor will make sure that will hold you to actually meeting those milestones. And again, making sure then to be able to fulfill that first tip, which is allowing yourself enough time. And then finally, you also may want to include in external reviewers who will review the document at the end. And we'll talk more about that in the webinar as well. And then also, just in thinking about the team, there's you too. And as you're putting your team together, one benefit that you're developing through the grant implementation, through the grant application development phase, are the skills that you'll need to be able to actually implement the grant post-award as well. And learning how to develop the leadership skills to pull all these different individuals to create the team that will be successful once you actually have to implement the grant.